One of the reasons why organizational changes fail is because the right people are not involved. Yeah. So in this video, I want to give you 5 who's that need to be involved in any organizational change to ensure its success. Now, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. I am Dr. David Glover, and I am committed to sharing moments that inspire self and leadership development. So if you can use a moment, go ahead and click the subscribe button, and don't forget to push the bell so that you're notified every single time that a new video comes out. So in this video, we want to talk about the 5 who's that need to be considered when implementing an organizational change. It is very vital, it is very critical, and I can't tell you how many times I have sat around tables or been called into consultings where this was not considered, and it cost them. It really held up, or it became dead in the water. The very first thing that you want to do, getting right into it, is you want to consider who all the change impacts and how does it affect every area. You want to be able to sit down with an organizational chart, sit down with a process chart, and see who all will be impacted, what areas, what departments, what different services does this affect. You want to consider that, and you want to have them at the table and keep them involved in the process, so that you keep that point. You keep that voice. You don't know everything. You won't know everything. You don't know all the processes. And sometimes people come to the table and they're at a higher level, they're called the bird's eye, and so they're not familiar with all the day-to-day tasks or the intricacies of the duties, and so they make decisions without considering who this impacts and what this impacts and products for the end user. What does that look like? So you want to make sure that you have not only those decision makers at the high end, but those day-to-day busy bees, those busy workers. You want to consider and at least have their voice impacted, so that you know that you're making the most judicial decision. Or you can mitigate risks, mitigate different type of behaviors that will resist the change. Not only having all levels at the table, you immediately employ buy-in. So it's a win-win situation when you consider them and they have the opportunity to be in the know, and they're not finding out from a newsletter or finding out from an announcement. Then they feel like they can own the process. They can own the change. Even if they don't agree, they at least are in the know. So you take that change resistance from them. Okay. Number 2, you also need to know who are the influencers. Who, before I even begin making this change or putting this change in process, who are the people that I need to notify, so that their influence can make this a smoother process, can make this it can lessen the change resistance, because we all are wired to be against change. We don't like it. Even if sometimes we don't feel comfortable in our current status, we will make workarounds, we'll do other things just to not have to have a actual change. So you're already working from an adverse situation from the outset. So knowing who can influence, knowing who can speak up and help that process is vital. And a tip, it is not always the titled person. It is not always, now you definitely out of protocol need to consider making sure that the president or the managers, mid-managers are notified, but as much as you can, scrub down to see who do people listen to. It may be the person with the most longevity that has the ear of the people that can say and give historical data and say, this will work, or help or champion them so that they can get more buy-in. And sometimes it's that person with the big charisma, big energy ball that everybody kind of seems to favor or you want to employ that. The more people you have on your side, the easier the change will be. So make sure you always consider and know who the influencers are, as well as just the shell of the stakeholders and end users. Okay. Number 3, you need to know who is responsible for developing the communication strategy. I can't tell you how many times change becomes so tedious, so arduous, and sometimes doesn't complete because there was no communication, because of lack of communications. And you need to know who needs to be communicated to, and how and who will manage the feedback. So if you're doing beta testing, or if you're doing things along the way, milestones, especially in project management, but as you're making those incremental steps, you need to know who owns the process for receiving feedback and getting results from feedback. Like, do we need to start something different? Do we need to change, augment something, diminish something else? You need all those things, and I'm going to make a separate video that will speak to communication in and of itself during change, organizational change. But for the sake of this video, you want to know who is responsible. Is it you yourself? That needs to be taken into consideration and added to your duties, because it is pivotal. It is vital that you communicate and over communicate and communicate again, as it is noted in empirical data that it takes, I believe it was around 7 times for people to see, hear information before they actualize it in their minds. It takes about 7 times to see or hear information before it is actualized in your mind. So that means the more you communicate, the more they have been communicated with. Okay, but you need to know who is responsible for that. So you need to make sure that they're always in the know, that they're always on their job, so that they're always communicating. That communication is always being sent out. Okay. Number 4, you need to know this change, who may need to be trained. What does that look like? When I implement a new system, who needs to be trained on it? Who will be that trainer? Does it need to be outsourced? But you need to know who, because if it's managers that need to be trained on something, you're then pulling them from their job. You're pulling man hours from them. And most of the time, we're already, as managers, you're already scheduled out. So you don't want to surprise them saying, hey, we've implemented this system, and now you are responsible for a day and a half of training. May not be the best, and then you'll get pushback and resistance. If you consider that this change will cause people to need to be trained, you're able to better manage that by going in and saying, hey, this is going to impact these areas. These people need to be trained all the way down to, the actual person, day-to-day operation. It'll help you be able to manage your time wisely, or schedule it out better, or block it out better. So you need to know who is being trained and what type of training. And we'll get into that. That's a separate video too. But consider, will you be bringing a consultant in to do training? Will it be a webinar? Something, online training is becoming more and more prevalent. So that may be out, but you're still going to be using that time, capping out that time so that the person gets it. And then there's going to be a learning curve after they've gotten. So you need to consider all of that. And number 5, who is the support system? You need to know the protocols, who is responsible for what area. That is absolutely critical, because going to one person and it's another person, that can only hinder and delay your time. And even if the person is unresponsive, if they're out, who is their backup? Do they have a backup? Is it possible that you can mitigate these risks beforehand? That you know who the communication strategist is, that can tell you if that person's out, you have the liberty of going above, a level, or is there somebody on the same level laterally, or do they have an assistant? All of those things need to be considered. Where do you need the most support? Where do you foresee that the resistance will be highest? Then you want to employ more people in that area to be able to help you mitigate those risks. So these are all techniques. These are all things. I want to hear from you. Have you ever gone through a change in an organization that was less than stellar? What happened? I wanted you to comment below and reach out to me, engage with me. If this video has helped you, if you think it was efficacious, make sure you like and subscribe. Click on the bell so that you won't miss any forthcoming videos. And I'll look for you next time.